Every year, after age 65, nearly 1 in 3 older adults will experience a fall serious enough to require medical attention. And here's what most people never realize. The problem isn't just weak legs or poor balance. It's that traditional Western exercise advice ignores the single most important physical skill your body needs to stay upright and independent as you age. Walk 10,000 steps, they say. Join a gym. Lift weights. But in Japan, where people over 65 remain active and mobile well into their 90s at rates that make American doctors envious, the focus isn't on how far you walk or how much you lift. It's on 5 specific movements, done for just a few repetitions each day, that rewire your nervous system to prevent falls, preserve joint health, and keep you moving without pain. These aren't exercises in the way you've been taught to think about exercise. They're closer to what the Japanese call shikatsu undu, which translates to life movement. Small, deliberate actions woven into your daily routine that compound over months and years into something far more powerful than any gym membership. Now, before we go further, I want you to do something. Drop a comment right now and tell me your age and where you're watching from. I'm curious how many of us are in that 65-plus range and whether you've noticed any changes in your balance or joint comfort over the past year. Don't worry about being specific, just a quick hello from wherever you are. That helps me understand who's in this conversation. Here's what they don't tell you about walking as your primary form of exercise after 65. Walking is good. Nobody's arguing against walking. But walking alone does almost nothing to challenge the specific neuromuscular pathways that prevent you from catching yourself when you trip, or from getting up easily after you sit down, or from turning your head and shifting your weight at the same time without feeling unsteady. Walking is repetitive forward motion on flat ground, and your body adapts to repetitive motion by becoming very good at that one thing and less capable of everything else. The Japanese approach is different. It's built on variety, on micro-challenges that force your brain and muscles to communicate in ways that walking simply doesn't require. And the results speak for themselves. In regions of Japan where these movement practices are common, hip fracture rates in people over 70 are nearly 40% lower than in similar populations in the United States, and the percentage of people who remain fully independent in their daily activities past age 80 is significantly higher. What I'm about to share with you are 5 specific movements that Japanese health practitioners, particularly those trained in traditional rehabilitation and longevity medicine, recommend for people over 65. 2 of them will feel almost too simple to matter. One of them might make you a little nervous the first time you try it. And the 5th one, the one we'll get to at the very end, is so deceptively easy that you'll probably dismiss it until you understand what it's actually doing inside your body. That last one is the most important of all, and it's the one that doctors in Japan consider non-negotiable for anyone who wants to avoid the nursing home. Let's start with the first movement. And this one addresses something that almost nobody talks about, but that affects your stability every single day. It's called Tanrin Ashi, which means forging the foot. Your feet are not just platforms you stand on. They're sensory organs packed with nerve endings that send constant information to your brain about the surface you're on, the angle of your body, and how to make split-second adjustments to keep you upright. After decades of wearing cushioned shoes and walking on flat indoor surfaces, those nerve pathways go quiet. Your feet stop talking to your brain. And when your feet stop talking, your brain stops listening. And that's when you step off a curb wrong or catch your toe on a rug and go down hard. Here's why this matters more after 65. The proprioceptive system. That's the network of sensors in your muscles and joints that tell your brain where your body is in space, naturally declines with age. Combine that decline with decades of sensory deprivation in your feet, and you've created a perfect setup for falls. Some analyses from rehabilitation centers in Japan suggest that targeted foot stimulation exercises can improve balance scores by measurable amounts within just a few weeks, and the mechanism is straightforward. You're waking up dormant neural pathways. Let me tell you about Margaret, 71, retired school teacher from Ohio. Margaret loved her daily walks, did 3 miles every morning, but she kept having near falls in her house, little stumbles that scared her even though she never actually went down. She couldn't figure it out. She was walking every day. Her legs felt strong, but her balance indoors was terrible. I had her start doing Tanrin Ashi every morning, and within 2 weeks she told me the stumbles had stopped. What changed wasn't her leg strength. It was her feet. They started sensing the ground again. Here's the protocol. Stand barefoot on a hard floor, not carpet. Lift all 10 toes off the ground as high as you can while keeping your heels and the balls of your feet planted. Hold for 3 seconds. Now press your toes back down and try to lift just your big toes while keeping the other 4 toes pressed into the floor. Most people can't do this at first, and that's fine. Then reverse it. Try to lift your 4 smaller toes while keeping your big toes down. Do this sequence 10 times and do it every single morning before you put on shoes. If you can't isolate the toes yet, just do your best. The effort is what creates the neural signal. You're teaching your brain to pay attention to your feet again. And if you want to take it further, spend 5 minutes a day walking barefoot on varied surfaces, gravel, grass, a textured mat, anything that isn't flat and predictable. The more your feet have to adapt, the smarter they become. Now, here's the kicker. This movement doesn't just improve balance. It also reduces chronic foot pain, especially in the arch and heel, because you're strengthening the intrinsic muscles of the foot, the small stabilizers that modern shoes have been doing the work for. People who do Tanrin Ashi regularly often find they can walk longer distances with less discomfort, and they're far less likely to develop plantar fasciitis or Morton's neuroma, those painful conditions that seem to come out of nowhere in your 60s and 70s. The second movement is called Shiko, and if you've ever seen sumo wrestlers training, you've seen a version of this. Now I know what you're thinking. I'm not asking you to drop into a full sumo squat. What we're using here is a modified version, and it targets something that becomes critically important as you age: hip mobility and the ability to shift your weight laterally. Most Western exercises move you forward and backward or up and down, but almost nothing trains side-to-side weight shifting. And that's exactly the movement you need when you're reaching for something on a shelf, stepping over an obstacle, or catching your balance when you start to tip. Here's the science. Your hip joint is a ball and socket, and it's designed to move in every direction. But if you only move it in a narrow range, the joint capsule tightens. The surrounding muscles weaken in the ranges you don't use, and over time you lose rotational and lateral mobility. When that happens, your hips can't do their job of stabilizing your pelvis, and the stress transfers to your knees and lower back. Data from orthopedic clinics show that limited hip mobility is one of the strongest predictors of knee pain and lower back pain in older adults, and it's also linked to higher fall risk because your body can't make the lateral adjustments needed to stay upright. Robert, 68, former construction worker, came to me with knee pain that his doctor told him was just arthritis and age. He'd been doing knee exercises, strengthening his quads, but nothing helped. I watched him walk and I noticed his hips barely moved. They were locked up. I taught him Shiko, and within 3 weeks his knee pain was 50% better. Within 6 weeks it was nearly gone. He didn't fix his knees. He fixed his hips, and his knees stopped compensating. Here's how you do it. Stand with your feet wider than shoulder width, toes pointing slightly outward. Keep your back straight and your core engaged. Shift your weight fully onto your right leg, bending that knee slightly while keeping your left leg straight. Your hips will shift to the right. Hold for 2 seconds, feeling the stretch through your left inner thigh and hip. Now shift your weight to the left, bending the left knee and straightening the right. That's 1 rep. Do 10 reps, slow and controlled, once in the morning and once in the evening. If you feel unsteady, hold onto a counter or chair back with 1 hand. The goal isn't to go low. The goal is to move your hips through their full side-to-side range while maintaining control. As you get comfortable, you can add a small pulse at the bottom of each shift, dipping an extra inch and coming back up. That pulse engages the glutes and deep hip stabilizers even more. And here's a habit-stacking tip. Do your Shiko right after you brush your teeth in the morning. Teeth, then hips. It takes 30 seconds and the consistency is what makes it work. Now let's talk about the third movement, and this is the one that might make you nervous. It's called Katashi Baransu, which means single leg balance. But the Japanese version has a specific twist that makes it far more effective than the balance exercises you've probably tried before. Most balance exercises have you stand on one leg and just hold it, maybe while brushing your teeth or waiting for the microwave. That's fine for beginners, but it doesn't challenge your vestibular system, the part of your inner ear that controls balance and spatial orientation. If you want to actually improve your balance, not just maintain it, you have to add an element that disrupts your visual and vestibular cues. That's what Katashi Baransu does. Here's why this is critical. Your balance system relies on 3 inputs: vision, proprioception from your joints and muscles, and vestibular signals from your inner ear. As you age, all 3 decline, but the vestibular system is the one that people neglect the most. When your vestibular system weakens, you become overly dependent on your vision to stay balanced. And that's dangerous because the moment you're in a dark room, or you turn your head quickly, you lose your primary cue and you fall. Japanese rehabilitation programs put heavy emphasis on vestibular training because they know it's the difference between someone who can navigate a dimly lit hallway at night and someone who ends up in the emergency room. Studies from balance. Disorder clinics indicate that targeted vestibular exercises can reduce fall risk by significant margins, and the improvements happen faster than most people expect, often within 2 to 3 weeks of consistent practice. I'll tell you about Linda, 73, retired nurse. Linda had stopped going to her book club in the evenings because she was terrified of walking through the parking lot in the dark. She'd had one fall in a parking lot 6 months earlier. Nothing serious, but it shook her confidence. She started doing Katashi Baransu every day, and within a month she told me she felt safe in the dark again. She wasn't just standing on one leg. She was teaching her brain to balance without relying on her eyes. Here's the protocol. Stand next to a wall or counter so you can catch yourself if needed, but don't hold on unless you have to. Lift your right foot off the ground, knee bent so you're balancing on your left leg. Now here's the key. Turn your head slowly to the left. Hold for 2 seconds, then turn it slowly to the right and hold for 2 seconds. Keep turning your head side to side while you balance. Do this for 30 seconds, then switch legs. If 30 seconds is too much, start with 15. The head turning is what challenges your vestibular system. It forces your brain to maintain balance without stable visual input. Once you're comfortable with that, close your eyes for 5 to 10 seconds while you balance. Eyes closed, single leg, no head turning yet, just stillness. That removes vision entirely and makes your vestibular system do all the work. When you can do that, you're ready for the advanced version. Eyes closed with slow head turns. Most people will never get to that level, and that's okay. Even the basic version, eyes open with head turns, is tremendously effective. Do this twice a day, morning and evening, and always have something stable nearby. You're pushing your limits, and that's the point, but you're doing it safely. And here's the progression. When 30 seconds feels easy, stand on a pillow or a folded towel. The unstable surface makes it exponentially harder and builds even more resilience into your balance system. One more thing. If you have any history of vertigo or inner ear problems, talk to your doctor before you start this one. For most people, it's perfectly safe, but vestibular conditions need professional guidance. Now, we get to the fourth movement, and this one is all about your spine. It's called Neko Undo, which means cat movement. And yes, it's inspired by the way cats arch and curve their backs. You've probably heard of cat-cow stretches in yoga, but the Japanese version is slower, more deliberate, and it focuses on something that Western exercise mostly ignores: segmental spinal mobility. Your spine isn't a rigid pole. It's 24 individual vertebrae stacked on top of each other, and each one is supposed to move independently. But after decades of sitting, sleeping on soft mattresses, and moving in limited ranges, those vertebrae start to lock together. You lose the ability to move fluidly through your spine, and that's when you start getting that stiff, hunched posture that makes you look and feel older than you are. Here's what happens mechanically. When your spine loses segmental mobility, the muscles along your back have to work harder to support you, and they get tired and tight. That tightness compresses the discs between your vertebrae, and compressed discs mean less shock absorption and more pain. It also affects your breathing because your ribcage can't expand fully, and shallow breathing means less oxygen to your brain and muscles, which means more fatigue and less energy. It's a cascade. Research from spinal health centers has shown that regular spinal mobility work can reduce chronic back pain, improve posture, and even enhance lung capacity in older adults, and the mechanism is simple. You're restoring the movement your spine was designed for. Here's Thomas, 69, retired accountant. Thomas had been dealing with lower back pain for years. He tried physical therapy, chiropractic, massage, everything. Some things helped for a few days, but the pain always came back. I taught him Neko Undo, and he started doing it every morning and every night. Within 2 weeks, his pain was noticeably better. Within a month, he told me it was the best his back had felt in a decade. He wasn't just stretching his back. He was teaching each vertebra to move again. Here's how you do it. Get on your hands and knees on a soft surface, a yoga mat, or a carpeted floor. Your hands should be directly under your shoulders, knees under your hips. Start with your spine in a neutral position, not arched, not rounded, just natural. Now, slowly arch your back, dropping your belly toward the floor and lifting your head and tailbone toward the ceiling. This is the cow position. Hold for 3 seconds, breathing in. Now reverse it. Round your spine toward the ceiling, tucking your tailbone under and dropping your head. This is the cat position. Hold for 3 seconds, breathing out. That's 1 rep, do 10 reps, moving as slowly as you can. The slower you go, the more you activate each segment of your spine. Think about moving 1 vertebra at a time, starting from your tailbone and rolling the movement up through your lower back, mid-back, and neck. Then reverse it on the way back, starting from your neck and rolling down to your tailbone. Most people rush this. Don't. Slow is better. If getting on your hands and knees is uncomfortable or not possible, you can do a modified version sitting in a chair. Sit up straight, hands on your knees. Arch your lower back and lift your chest, then round your lower back and tuck your chin. Same movement pattern, just seated. Do this every morning when you wake up and every evening before bed. It takes 90 seconds. And here's a bonus. Neko Undo also helps with digestion because the spinal movement massages your internal organs and stimulates your vagus nerve, which controls gut motility. A lot of people notice they feel less bloated and more regular after adding this to their routine. Now here's what ties all of this together. And it's something that American medicine mostly ignores, but Japanese longevity doctors consider essential. These movements aren't just about your muscles or your joints. They're about your nervous system. Every single one of these exercises sends signals from your body to your brain, and those signals keep your brain plastic, adaptable, and young. When you stop challenging your nervous system with varied movement, your brain starts to prune the neural pathways it doesn't think you need anymore. You lose coordination, balance, and body awareness not because your body is broken, but because your brain has decided those skills aren't worth maintaining. The Japanese concept here is Shinki Kairo, which means nerve circuit. The idea is that movement builds and maintains the circuits between your brain and your body, and the more circuits you have, the more resilient you are. It's not about strength, it's about connectivity. And that brings us to the 5th and final movement, the one that Japanese doctors say is the most important of all. Before we get there, I want to hear from you again. Drop a comment and tell me which of the first 4 movements feels the most useful for where you are right now. Is it the footwork, the hip shifts, the balance challenge, or the spine mobility? I'm genuinely curious what resonates with people. The 5th movement is called Fukushiki Kokyu, and it translates to abdominal breathing, but that translation doesn't capture what this actually is. This isn't just taking deep breaths. It's a specific breathing pattern that activates your diaphragm, calms your nervous system, and does something that most people don't realize is even possible. It directly influences your balance, your pain levels, and your energy. Here's what's happening. Your diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle that sits below your lungs, and when it's working properly, it's your primary breathing muscle. But most people over 60, especially if they've spent years in desk jobs or dealing with stress, have shifted to shallow chest breathing. They're using their neck and shoulder muscles to breathe instead of their diaphragm, and that creates a cascade of problems. First, shallow breathing means less oxygen, which means less energy and more fatigue. Second, when your diaphragm isn't working, your core stability suffers because your diaphragm is part of your core. It works with your abdominal muscles and pelvic floor to stabilize your spine and pelvis. Third, chest breathing keeps your nervous system in a low-grade stress state, which increases inflammation, disrupts sleep, and makes pain worse. Fourth, and this is the part that surprises people, poor diaphragm function affects your balance because the pressure changes in your abdomen help stabilize your spine, and a stable spine is the foundation of good balance. Data from respiratory therapy programs show that diaphragmatic breathing training can improve core stability, reduce chronic pain, lower blood pressure, and improve balance outcomes in older adults. And some of these changes happen within days. The mechanism is partly mechanical. Your diaphragm is physically stabilizing your core and partly neurological. Slow diaphragmatic breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system that counteracts stress. Here's Carol, 74, retired office manager. Carol had been dealing with chronic lower back pain and poor sleep for years. She'd tried everything. Pain medications gave her side effects. Physical therapy helped a little, but never lasted. I taught her Fukushiki Kokyu, and she started doing it every morning and every night before bed. Within a week, her sleep improved. Within 2 weeks, her back pain was significantly better. She called me after a month and said she felt like a different person. She wasn't doing some complicated treatment. She was breathing correctly. Here's the protocol, and this is so simple that you'll probably think it can't possibly work. Lie on your back with your knees bent, feet flat on the floor. Place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly, just below your rib cage. Close your eyes. Breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4, and as you breathe in, focus on pushing your belly hand up toward the ceiling. Your chest hand should barely move. Your belly is rising because your diaphragm is pulling down and creating space in your lungs. Hold for a count of 2. Now breathe out slowly through your mouth for a count of 6, letting your belly fall. Your chest still shouldn't move much. That's 1 cycle. Do 10 cycles every morning right after you wake up and 10 cycles every night before you sleep. It takes about 3 minutes. As you get comfortable, you can extend the counts. Inhale for 5, hold for 3, exhale for 7. The longer exhale is what activates your parasympathetic nervous system and tells your body it's safe to relax. Once you've mastered it lying down, practice it sitting and then standing. The goal is to make diaphragmatic breathing your default pattern throughout the day. And here's a habit stack. Every time you sit down, take 3 diaphragmatic breaths before you do anything else. Sit, breathe, then continue. It resets your posture and your nervous system. Now here's the part that makes this the most important of the 5 movements. Everything else we've talked about, the footwork, the hip mobility, the balance, the spinal movement, all of it works better when your nervous system is calm and your core is stable. Fukushiki Kokyu is the foundation. It's the thing that makes everything else more effective. Japanese longevity doctors say that if you only have time for one practice, this is it. 5 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing every day will do more for your overall health and independence than an hour of walking. And the reason is that it addresses the root of so many problems: chronic stress, poor core stability, shallow breathing, and nervous system dysregulation. Let's put this all together. These 5 movements, Tanren Ashi, Shiko, Katashi Baransu, Neko Undu, and Fukushiki Kokyu, take less than 10 minutes total if you do them all in one session. But you don't have to do them all at once. Spread them throughout your day. Do the footwork when you wake up. Do the hip shifts after breakfast. Do the balance work in the afternoon. Do the spine movement before bed. Do the breathing when you wake up and when you lie down at night. They're designed to fit into your life, not take over your life. And here's what happens when you do them consistently. Within 2 weeks, you'll notice you feel steadier on your feet. Within a month, you'll notice less pain and more energy. Within 3 months, you'll notice you're moving in ways you haven't moved in years. You'll reach for things without thinking about it. You'll turn around without holding on to something. You'll get up from a chair without using your hands. These aren't dramatic moments. They're quiet victories. But they're the victories that keep you independent. The Japanese approach to aging isn't about fighting your body or trying to stay young. It's about moving intelligently, maintaining the connections between your brain and your body, and doing the small things every day that compound into resilience. There's a term in Japanese, ikigai, which means reason for being. And you can't have ikigai if you can't move freely. These 5 movements aren't just about preventing falls or reducing pain. They're about protecting your ability to live the life you want to live, to do the things that give you purpose and joy, for as long as possible. One last thing. These movements are safe for most people, but if you have any specific medical conditions, recent surgeries, or significant pain, talk to your doctor before you start. This isn't medical advice. It's education. And the goal is to give you the tools to have a conversation with your healthcare provider about what makes sense for you. So, here's my final question for you, and I really want to hear your answer. Which one of these 5 movements are you going to try first, and why? Is it the footwork because you've been stumbling? The hip shifts because your knees hurt? The balance work because you're afraid of falling? The spine movement because your back is stiff? Or the breathing because you're tired of feeling tired? Drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one, and your answer might help someone else who's trying to figure out where to start.